Mishmin Tuhis, Conrakat Kanyon, CoyoteWoman, Sarah's Roots. Rambling, ranting coyote at you here today. I want to talk about why there is this amazing reaction happening. There are many times that people like to tokenize indigenous cultures and communities, even some of our own Native relations who learn about ways to honor culture and ways to connect with culture and to celebrate visibility. It can be admirable and it can be detrimental. I'm recognizing a theme here around this indigenous renaissance. Indigenous communities standing strong. It's not as if we weren't here. It's not as if we have thoroughly remained silent. It's just now has been a time that we can be stronger and louder and more present and be active in voicing many of the wrongdoings. And so there was a lovely, disgusting, interesting, curious advertisement with the misspelling of the word savage. I barely tolerate that word. And it was for perfume. And I understand that the indigenous community member is in their regalia. And they probably had thorough control of how they were presented. And it's very possible that the Native consultants thoroughly thought about how this would be presented. And those considerations being had are really important. However, and there are going to be different sides to this story. However, when we think about the marginalization of indigenous communities and cultures, when we think about the tokenization and the ongoing cultural genocide, the ongoing paper genocide, the negligence to honor truth and history, when people even come at us and say, well, why aren't you? Or don't you like to be called? Or you're not American Indian, you're Native American, you're this, you're that. It's like, where's the humility in consent culture? Where's the humility in saying, may I ask how you identify? Where's the humility in saying, I recognize that there is a disgusting history here in the United States, here in the Americas, all around the world, that colonization have impacted indigenous cultures. And in recognizing that, there is due diligence in doing homework. And so, upon waking up and seeing this little interesting piece of media, I thought, would it be okay if we had a parallel advertisement, quite possibly like, I don't know, an African American individual, possibly in chains, accurately depicting historical relevance, maybe engaging in like maybe some like twerking and then breaking the chains and be like, yeah, savagery. Just thinking about parallel things, because in today's settler colonial narratives, indigenous cultures are constantly tokenized, and tidbits are always taken apart, and convenient pieces are presented, i.e. core shamanism, talking sticks, spirit animals, smudging. I only bring this up because right now on social media is bubbling this viscous, reactionary, emotional feeling, reactions, and I don't think this is the healthy way to engage upon this. Reaction can be helpful with some instances, and I could see this is building up. It doesn't feel okay. Possibly well-intended, without deep, spiritual, considerate, acknowledging, accountable, humble, thorough considerations weren't taken. I think it was a quick, oh yeah, Native people are part of it. Yeah, Native people are in their regalia. Yeah, Native people get a voice how they feel about it. And because of this, because of that, because of this, these things seem to line up. It's still capitalism. It's still colonization. It's still absent-mindedness and negligence of the sacred. the considerations that aren't taken around the depictions of Native peoples. Yes, there was consent involved. However, when is the general populace going to acknowledge all levels of truth in history? We all could probably recite, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Who did he run into? Can we talk about their language? Do we know their sacred waters? Do we know their sacred mountains? Do we know their neighbors? We probably can identify the resources on ships, the marriages, the offspring of the people. Yet still, we can't acknowledge the indigenous cultures that were impacted. And this is 530 years? Inquiring about why we romanticize indigenous cultures, why we feel a gravitational pull to spirituality. Could it be that indigenous communities and cultures have been the most recent wound of colonization? That spiritual, integral connection is very strong, and many of us who suffer from settler colonialism mentality desire it, and instead of having a healthy relationship, instead of looking into our own ancestral lineages and respecting our own ancestors and recognizing that, wow, if we think about it, all of our ancestors, all of our elders have their own indigenous lineages from the land that they come from. How can we honor truth in history? How can we reconnect and honor our ancestors? And how can we acknowledge indigenous protocol with the lands that we are on right here, right now? The indigenous peoples who deserve to be part of the conversations around how the environment, how their community, how the next generations are going to be impacted by the decisions and the devastation of these spaces. Just those considerations should be had. The different, unique, diverse perspectives of many cultures, of many languages in small areas. How differently we engage in the world. However, through all of the indigenous communities that I've ever witnessed, they have all recognized that we are stewards of the land. It is not for us to capitalize off of. It's not for us to profit off of. We steward it. We benefit from it. We respect it. And we recognize that we need to be good ancestors in training. And so in this, when you witness the reactions, when you feel compelled to be angry and mad and do things, what actions can be most informative? What ways can we express accountability and quite possibly recognize ways to call people in or call people out around accountable actions of possible negligence, well-intended delusions, intentionality? But how can we connect? Because right now in today's political climate, there's this othering and pushing it back. And it's like, when can we come together and have difficult conversations? Instead of just reacting and lashing out and saying, I don't like you, I hate you, you're stupid for saying this is okay or this is right, this is wrong. We need to come together to have those difficult conversations. Restorative justice, restorative healing, integral community and bridge building. So I hope when you witness this intriguing digital storm about this savage perfume, that it's just one tiny piece of this big issue. And just think about how we can go forward in a good way. Usually I'm a little more ranty and rambly, but we should just be patient with it and take intentional action. Coming at you also as the co-founder of Kanyon Konsulting LLC, bridging the gap between Indigenous and contemporary value systems, having conversations on how recognizing that Indigenous pedagogies, Indigenous technology, Indigenous wisdom can yield insight towards strategizing a sustainable future. So, hope you all have a great afternoon.